The Warriors are going to be an NBA dynasty once again if they do make the proper moves. But first of all, how's it going, you guys? Conrad Sports Cars here. You already know how it is. Real quick, I did say that these would be daily videos or podcast episodes, and I lied because I didn't upload an episode yesterday. But I promise I will at least be posting more consistently than I did before. Okay. I'm sorry that I didn't do an episode yesterday. It was like 1 a.m. I was on doesn't matter. No excuses. I'm sorry, you guys. I promise I'll be posting more. I swear. Anyway, I got my notes. Let's just get straight into this one. All right. So the Warriors are currently the 8th seed in the Western Conference, a very loaded and in comparison, a very loaded and competitive Western Conference, I might add. Only a few teams I would say confidently are not going to be making the playoffs. Otherwise, there's like 10 to 12 teams that I would not be shocked whatsoever if they ended up as the 8th seed in the Western Conference, right? And of course, Steph Curry is still playing. Actually, he's almost replicating. He's almost replicating his 2015-16 unanimous MVP season, which is quite insane to think about some of the narratives that were being thrown out there before the season started, right? Is his broken hand going to affect his shooting? Is he still the best NBA, or not best NBA player, but is he still the best point guard in the NBA? Blah, 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 blah. What's going to happen, right? And he's really kind of just shut down all those narratives and proved all of us wrong. He's like, why would you doubt me, right? He's still one of the best players in the NBA. He's one of the few superstars that we actually do have in this league. It's quite insane. Now, there are two different routes that this team could take in order to get back to a dynasty sort of form. So let's just run through some of the players or some of the pieces that they do have on this team. So, of course, I think the elephant in the room is Klay Thompson. He's currently out with an injury, but he's just signed a near max or a max contract over this past offseason. And we all know who Klay Thompson is and who he can be. Easily one of the best off-ball players in the entire league, one of the best shooters in the entire league. And of course, he's typically tasked with guarding the opposing team's best guard and sometimes even the opposing team's small forward or wing, right? Because he can shift down and play the three if he really has to. They also do have James Wiseman, who is a very raw prospect. I don't think people remember just how raw of a prospect he is, but because he's 7'1", he's, of course, 7'1" with a 7'8" wingspan, he's just going to be very, very, very good. Even if he doesn't have a lot of technical skills, right? So he is still super raw and has a lot of improvements to be made to his overall game. But he looks pretty good considering that he's only about 1/4 or 1/3 of the way through his first rookie season in the NBA after only playing 3 games in college and, having most of the season canceled because of the virus, right? So, of course, he had some more extended time off. So it'll be nice to see him potentially get another year under his belt and, another year of experience and potentially take a step up next season as a player. And then, of course, we also saw Andrew Wiggins really take a step up this season as a player, not as much on the offensive end, but on the defensive end for sure. Also actually put on a little bit of weight and has improved a little bit. He's not going to become what we once thought he would be out of high school or college, but he's at least making his 30-something million dollar year contract look a little bit less bad. Like, look a little bit less crappy. I guess that's just the best way that I'm going to put it. He makes it look not as bad as it really, really is. Then they also do have Eric Paschal, who isn't like amazing. Didn't take a significant step up this year, but he's still a nice bench piece to have and is a nice guy to have, coming off your bench as a second rotational piece, right? And then they do also have Kelly Oubre, who's been a bit disappointing, not really doing what we were hoping for him to do out of Phoenix, kind of a 3-and-D wing with some freakish athletic ability. The 3 part of that 3-and-D game has not exactly shown itself this season. Took him a long time to hit a shot that wasn't a layup or a dunk, I believe. So, wish it could be better, but of course he isn't the injured player exception. So, only 1 year at least with him. And I don't know about the rules, but they might actually be able to trade him, potentially even to get some more assets back, right? So, they won't have to deal with him for long if his production doesn't step up. Obviously, Klay Thompson will be taking his place next season. And then also they could potentially have their first round pick this year. They did use that pick in a trade in the trade for Kelly Oubre, but it is top 20 protected. And currently as an 8th seed in the Western Conference, that means that pick would be top 20 and they would get their pick back. So if they stay around this range, then they would have their pick for this year and they would not have to worry about it. Yes, they would not have to worry about losing that pick to the Thunder. I had to do the math in my head a little bit just to make sure. But most importantly, for the first route that they could take, this is the most important piece for them, is this Timberwolves pick that they own this year. It is top 3 protected. But the Timberwolves are the worst team in the league this year. I believe at 7-21. I want to say, I don't know for sure if that's their exact record. I do not know that they've only won 7 games, at least at the time of recording. And that's pretty bad. That's worse than both the Pistons and the Wizards, which I didn't think was possible, but apparently it is. And the Timberwolves are seriously accomplishing that. And of course, if they are ending up as the worst team in the entire NBA, then there's a very likely chance that this pick, of course, is top 3, which means, and not a lot of people know this means that the Warriors would get an unprotected 2022 first round pick from Minnesota. And we'll get into that a little bit later. But here's the first scenario I want to go over with you guys. So there's a chance that that this Timberwolves pick does end up going to the Timberwolves, right? And that means that later the Warriors would get their 2022 unprotected first round pick. But if it doesn't end up that way and it ends up as being the 4th or 5th or 6th pick in the NBA draft, the Warriors could still get a very, very good prospect. From some people that I've talked to, they've all said, or at least they did say early on after the draft, I think happened, they were all saying that they would have taken 6 or 7 of the best guys out of this incoming draft class before they took anyone that came into this class from the 2020, right? LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, and James Wiseman. Those were the top 3 guys, right? And that's pretty insane to think about, right? Top 6 or 7 guys all would probably go over any of the other guys in this 2020 draft class, which means that the Warriors could end up with a very good prospect if this does end up being the 4th, 5th, 6th, or I guess even 7th pick in the NBA draft this season, right? And pairing that player with James Wiseman along with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, that's not a bad team. However, of course, they may not want to have those clashing age groups together, right? You're kind of split between rebuilding and winning now, but we'll get into that a little bit later. However, the other scenario is something that's even crazier, right? As far as this draft class goes, because they could have the unprotected Timberwolves pick next season, and there's a very good chance next season that not the Warriors, but that the Timberwolves are just as bad next season as they are this season, and that they have been pretty much every year for the past decade. If you really think about it, right? So let's go over some of the issues that they've had as a team. First of all, D'Angelo Russell actually now is out 4 to 6 weeks, which is very, very, very bad for this Timberwolves team. I'm not completely sure how this surgery is going to be affecting his play in the future, but it could make him a worse player, slightly less. And with a team that's this bad, even a little less production or a little less value is not exactly something that you want to hear. One other thing that I'm going to mention, but I don't really want to, is Karl Anthony Towns has dealt with the loss of a lot of loved ones, and that does affect players' mental health. And I know that it has certainly affected his. I believe he's talked about it a couple of times. So he's not exactly going to be playing at his best. And maybe that does have some longer term effects on him. I don't want to say that as like in a negative connotation. I don't want to be putting that out there into the world, right? But it's most certainly a possibility. Moving on, he also did catch the virus, unfortunately, which does have long-lasting effects on your immune system. So maybe his fatigue and his stamina are still a little bit down going into next season, and that could, of course, make the team or get the team off to a slow start. Which if you tack on an extra 5 losses at the beginning of the season, that could take you from the 3rd worst team in the NBA to the worst team in the NBA, depending on, of course, how close the standings are. Now, they've also had very little depth this season. Their bench pieces are terrible, and honestly, their starting 5 isn't exactly the best either, but they have very little depth on a team that isn't exactly very good anyway. And I've also heard that they've had a lot of head coaching issues, and Ryan Saunders may be out of there next season. And even if not, bad coaching situation isn't exactly something that's going to be helping your team next season, right? However, next season, some of the other issues that they can or will be dealing with are no defense. They have absolutely zero defense on this team, and they're not going to be able to sign enough players or draft a guy good enough to completely change that, at least in my opinion. Karl Anthony Towns is one of the worst defenders in the entire league. So is D'Angelo Russell. Malik Beasley is not a great defender either. Anthony Edwards isn't bad, but that kind of depends on the amount of work that he puts in on the end of the ball. on that end of on that end of the floor, right? He's still not an elite defender regardless, but he's at least passable and a pretty good defender when he puts in effort. However, when he puts in effort on one end of the ball, it kind of worsens his production on the offensive side of the ball, because he's wasting more, not wasting, but he's using more energy on defense than he is on offense, and that just makes it a little bit harder. And Josh Okogie is a good defender, but he doesn't do anything else. And honestly, his defense has gotten a little bit worse this year, which isn't exactly good for a team that has very little defense, right? D'Angelo Russell is also a bit overrated in my opinion. Takes too many stupid shots or takes too many shots for a scoring level and doesn't exactly play make enough to really counterbalance that poor scoring production. So that's another issue that they could potentially have. And then one really big thing that I need to point out is Malik Beasley may not even be playing for this team next season, or only can play a certain amount of games, because he's going to be faced with charges, maybe jail time for, I don't know completely what it was. I want to say it was like assault charges or armed robbery or something like that, something insane like that, which is 19 points per game that you still have to make up. So unless Anthony Edwards and an incoming rookie, as a top pick in the NBA draft can make up that 19 points per game, which I'm not completely sure that they can, that's a lot of production that you're losing for a team, once again, that is all offense and has very little to no defense on the team. And then finally, it's a small market with a terrible front office. They're not going to be signing anyone that's going to make this team significantly better. So it's very likely that the Minnesota Timberwolves are going to be just as bad next season as they are this season. And so what does that mean, right? If the Warriors do get the unprotected 2022 first round pick from the Minnesota Timberwolves, because that pick ends up being a top 3 pick this year, who could the Warriors potentially get? Well, there's been a lot of debates about this, and apparently it's passing through like NBA's front office or whatever at the moment, to potentially allow players to come into the league straight out of high school in 2022. And who is graduating in 2022? Imani Bates. The Warriors could get Imani Bates if they get the first round pick in 2022, and if that rule is passed and allows high school prospects to come to the league straight out of high school. The Warriors could get the man that has been compared to Kevin Durant so many times and is quite a very good comparison. I believe in the kid a lot. They could get the second coming of Kevin Durant by trading away Kevin Durant. And that all of a sudden could, Imani could easily make them a win now team still, even if he is a rookie, because he could still be just that good. But it gives him options for, maybe a potential rebuild in Golden State, right? Because him and James Wiseman could be a very nice duo to have, especially if they really can help Wiseman to become a better technical player, not as quite as of a raw prospect. They could be dangerous as a duo, and that doesn't even include any of the other pieces that they would get if they do decide to rebuild, or any of the free agents that they could potentially sign. The Warriors have a lot of options here, and if they do end up with Imani Bates, they would both be good now, because they'd have whatever, Steph, Clay, and Imani, and James Wiseman that's been improving with some time. Or they could potentially rebuild with those two, trade away Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, which, I mean, I doubt they would, but trade away those guys, trade away some bench pieces, sign some nice free agents, and rebuild the team with those two guys as your duo for the future, right? Which would be very, very, very nice to see. However, one other thing to mention is that they could actually go another route with this. They do have this pick. They have Wiggins' contract. They have their potential pick this year and some other potential picks in the future, right? And considering that they're a large market in California, a place that is Kawhi's or near Kawhi's hometown, maybe a sign and trade for Kawhi Leonard is not out of the question next season. Who knows? If the Clippers do underperform next season and they don't win, there's a very real possibility that Kawhi Leonard leaves. He has not shown any loyalty to the Clippers organization whatsoever. He's kind of said that it's on the table. There have been a couple of quotes that have been floating around out there. I don't have any of them memorized or written down, but it's not out of the question to be seeing Kawhi Leonard in a uniform that is not a Clippers uniform next season. I honestly would not be all that surprised. So they could potentially make a move for a sign and trade for him, or I mean, if they really want to, they could potentially just try to clear up some cap space for him and just sign him directly without having to trade those assets directly to the Clippers organization, right? So, they have a lot of potential. They could either be winning now by getting Kawhi Leonard next season, or they could be getting Amani Bates or just another very good prospect in this year's draft and have a very, very, very bright future as a franchise. Regardless, even if neither of these happen, right, regardless of even if neither of those scenarios happen, Klay Thompson coming back is massive for this team. James Wiseman will be taking a step up in his sophomore season, most likely, and they will still be a very competitive team in the Western Conference, probably a top 4 seed. I would not be surprised whatsoever, because Klay Thompson has a very big impact on this team. For those of you that don't know, but regardless, that could be something we discuss at some other point. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed it, go ahead and check out, the rest of the channel, or check out the I don't know what it's called on Spotify, but check out my Spotify, right? See if there's any other episodes or videos that you may enjoy. Also in the description is going to be a link tree to all my social media pages, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple. If you do want to listen to these podcasts somewhere besides YouTube, you could go ahead and do that. Why not, right? Once again, thank you for tuning into this episode. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.